Aloha, everybody, and welcome back to the ThinkTech Hawaii studios for another episode of Security Matters. Today, we have Kasia Hanson with us. She is the Director of Sales for IoT Security in some amazing verticals, smart cities and security and some other things. Many of our audience have probably met Kasia. Intel's made in my opinion, an amazing splash into our industry and tried to help us move forward. And Kasia, you've been so busy these past few years. It's an honor to have you finally slow down. I'm sorry it was Corona. It took coronavirus to slow you down and get you on, but I'm so happy to have you here today. Thanks for joining me.
Hey, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. And, I know we're still kind of on this Corona-cation that you did with Nigel, right? That was a great episode. So really happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. Well, I think a lot of folks in our industry know you and maybe know some of your story, but maybe give it an intro just as much as you'd care to share. I know in these days of social sharing, we're all trying to share a little less than we used to with privacy concerns, but whatever you can tell us about yourself that worked your way up to where you're at today.
Sure. So I've been at Intel for 20 years. Never thought in my life I'd be at one company for 20 years, but here I am. It's been a great ride. My experience covers data center, selling to large end users in the oil and gas business, as well as entertainment. I've been in the storage business, and then as the last couple of years, I jumped into the IoT business in our video business unit and sales, really building out our ecosystem of partners around the globe and enabling partners with edge inferencing capabilities, bringing to the forefront of new vision products for the market and so forth. So it's been really fun and it's been hard to be home. I will say that for a couple months. My kids are like, "Are you okay?" Because I'm used to being on the road. As you know, we all see each other at a lot of events and have a great time. But I also travel globally, so it's been a little challenging to be in one place at one time. So anyhow, but that's the background.
Wow. So correct me if I'm wrong. I think Intel took an early, fairly proactive approach about getting shut down. I think you and I talked a little bit about that. They could kind of see this coming. Maybe they had a little more global vision than a lot of other companies in the United States.
I think I've been really impressed, with my employer. Intel did take a proactive approach with employees. We have about 100,000 employees around the globe. So I think,
Wow.
Any employer, has to look at their employee base and figure out how do they protect their people, how do they help their customers and partners, and that's exactly what Intel's done. And I've been really proud of their response. They're definitely taking a very well thought out approach to keeping people safe, and it's not just employees; it's customers, partners, folks that come and work at our fabs, right? That it might be contractors. It's how do you protect everyone, and that I think they've done a great job of doing that.
Yeah, it's amazing. I live on an island, obviously, and I want to get into a little bit of this global perspective because I know from talking with you how much you travel. Can you give our audience try to give us some of those layers out there with this entire ecosystem that sort of Intel is pushing into and then I guess influencing to develop new technologies and bring, use compute to bring, technology to solve problems in the industry. What are the layers out there that you have to interact with to make that happen?
Yeah, it's we have a very large ecosystem around the globe, from OEM partners to ODM partners to integrators to ISV partners, as well as end user customers we work closely with, and of course you can't forget the cloud service providers. So we have many layers within the IoT space. We have an alliance called the IoT Solutions Alliance, and that is where you have the crux of IoT ecosystem that we enable. And essentially our focus, we saw many years ago, edge computing really started exploding, right? AI, computer vision, deep learning, the capabilities were rapidly coming at the industry. And I said it several times in at different industry events that, it's like a freight train, right? People were like, do I get on? Do I get off? What do I do? And especially for the security industry, right? I know some of the history there. But what we saw is there's an opportunity for edge computing. 43% of data is processed at the edge versus in the cloud. So now companies are looking at, hey, how do I process the data close to the sensor? Keep some of my more sensitive, confidential data on-prem, perhaps, and very secure. And then how do I also integrate the cloud, right? And so you have a couple different components there that we started seeing rapidly evolving. And I think we're definitely on a COVID, to me, by the way, has really created this rapid acceleration of innovation. And while I think we'll continue to see it, right, as we know, COVID, every day there's something new. I know we were talking before we started here. It seems like it's very fluid, right? And we're learning answers every day. I remember when the quarantine happened here in California, and we started meeting with customers about how would they reopen, and it's still to that point where some of those customers aren't reopened because there's so many things they have to take into account in addition to the public health guidelines in their states. But it's how is the technology evolving and becoming better in just literally 4 months, the technology that didn't exist, but this is technology that would be run at the edge, so you think about crowd control and people counting and distancing, and if you're wearing a mask or not. I mean, who knew we would be, in that particular space? So it's really evolved, and our ecosystem is really important to us. They're the ones that really come up with these innovative solutions. We enable it with our technology, with our vision technology, and our architecture capabilities. So, it's our partners that really are out there bringing this to the world.
Wow. How do you think we're doing, as much as you can sort of compare and contrast maybe across the markets that you service? Is North America, are we in the lead? Are we still trying to find our way compared to some of the others? I know I read about some pretty, interesting developments in some other countries. I think like Israel's done some things, and the UK is working on things. And I don't know if you have a lot of visibility, but from your perspective, the technology rollout and the enablement that you're able to provide from your chair, how do you think we're doing? Are we leveraging these things?
I think it's all geography dependent, right? And it's based on, first and foremost, the laws of that country, right? So, one thing we do, and we work with our partners to do, is we make sure we follow ethics, privacy rules, and so forth, based on that country, right? And so, U.S. is a little unique in that we have a lot going on in the U.S. Asia tends to be a front runner in terms of some of that technology enablement. From my seat and my view is, they oftentimes have a lot more flexibility in some of the technology they can adopt and roll out. So there's a lot of unique innovations that come out of Asia. You look at some of the countries in Asia, right, that have really battled COVID, for example, and what have they used? There's some low tech and there's some no tech, but the technology they've been able to utilize in a very quick way to kind of flatten their curves has been pretty impressive. So if you look at like a Korea or a Taiwan or even a Japan, right? You look at those countries and they're really innovators and bringing that technology, and they have a lot more flexibility to some degree, I think, based on their laws and their government. Europe, obviously GDPR is really important, right? So, and there's a lot more countries in Europe, so you have to follow the laws of that country, and GDPR especially. So I think from an innovation perspective, we still see a lot of innovation coming out of Europe, obviously, a lot of movement, but they've also been very challenged as of late with COVID as well, right? With Italy and Spain and some of the countries seeing a lot of spikes. So, I think we'll continue to see that rapid innovation coming out of Europe. There's a couple of partners who we've seen develop, some quick analytics packages that can be put into market, and that's what by the way, end customers have been asking for that. How do I count people? How do I know? I was joking around with somebody, and I went into one of my favorite retailers, and that retailer, has cameras all around, and they have somebody at the door with an iPhone clicking how many people come into the store. And this is a 3-story department store, big, right? And all I kept thinking to myself is, wow, if they just had one of these packages, right, it would really help them a lot. So it's things like that I think hopefully will start to be adopted in the market, and that rapid innovation will continue to happen. And some of those are coming out of Europe. So I think it's a really good movement. And then of course, US, one big country with lots of states and everybody's kind of doing their own thing. And but I do think we have a lot of opportunity with the rapid innovation, especially with COVID. I mean, you think about, prior to, somebody was talking to me about 9/11, right? Do you remember before 9/11 versus after 9/11 and how you flew? So I think this is a test for us, and what kind of changes are we going to be able to make going forward, and how can technology help us? I think there's going to be short-term technology help, and then there's going to be long-term technology innovations that really help enrich our lives. So that's kind of my assessment around the globe.
Wow. Is there, do you see a continuing appetite for, new investment and new activity? Although I know global markets are shaky, and, the supply chain's kind of maybe more questionable than it was in the past from a raw materials perspective and things like that. Are you aware of teams that are just, moving forward and getting more investment capital and working to build out some things that maybe we didn't even think we needed 6 months ago?
I think what I'm a couple of the areas I'm seeing. One in particular is robotics. Robotics is a really interesting one, right? Because you have robotics that can be in like manufacturing environments, like small robotics that kind of go do different things. Distribution centers use a lot of robotics, and so robotics, how can that help us going forward relative to sanitization, right? And so there's companies, there's places like Japan, right? They develop robotics, and I think over time we'll start to see more and more of that in development. I also think the analytics will continue to evolve. I think they'll start to be adopted more quickly now, because people need to count how, there's those rules of how many people can go in a building, how many people can, are people wearing masks and things like that. And I think it'll be over time. I think it's still very fluid, right, in terms of investing. We absolutely see, I see investments happening all the time. I mean, look at some of the mergers that we've seen the last couple of days, some of the acquisitions that we've seen, and I think you'll continue to see that probably in the market. Companies coming together to build out more capabilities to serve, the security business, for example. So I think that'll continue, but I certainly think, we definitely have a road ahead of us for sure.
Yeah, and I don't know how short or how long it's going to be. Hopefully shorter than longer. Well, we're getting towards the middle. Let's go ahead and we'll take a 1-minute break here. We'll pay a few bills, and we'll be right back with Kasia Hanson.
Aloha, I'm Lillian Cumic, host of Lillian's Vegan World, the show where we talk about veganism and the plant-based diet, located in Honolulu, Hawaii. I'm a vegan chef and cooking instructor, and I have lots of information to share with you about how awesome this plant-based diet is. So do tune in every second Thursday from 1 p.m. Aloha.
Hey, aloha, everybody. Welcome back to Security Matters. Today we are with Kasia Hanson, Intel's Global Director of IoT Sales in the security space and smart city space. And Kasia has a lot of fun all over the globe, so she's got a perspective that we don't often get. Kasia, thanks again for joining us today so much. I wanted to get into a little bit of we were talking a little bit how the development's continuing, and there's a lot of companies innovating very quickly to try to get us all back to work and back into our buildings. And Intel put together, I think maybe during Q2, a really nice ebook that I thought was informative and kind of brought a lot of these questions and answers together for people in a space. And in particular, there's a page dedicated to getting everybody like back to work. And since we're trying to get back to work, maybe we'll kick that around a little bit. Some of the technology that perhaps you've seen, you know, they talk about just in breaking and socializing inside the building itself, you know, maybe doing voice-enabled coffee makers, maybe doing digital ordering, contactless payments for food. Maybe everything's just done with our voice, right? Where we just say what we want to happen for our day and it magically just happens, you know? What do you think, or have you seen folks in the US working on these types of things that'll help some of us get back to work sooner?
Yeah, I absolutely have. I mean, I think a lot of our partner discussions have really been how do we help enable bringing those solutions forward, as well as talking to end users. So if you think about large casinos or, you know, cruise lines or a large venue, right? Or even a building, you know, first thing we look at is the entry, right? So what is the technology that's available that can help you create a safe environment? I mean, everybody I've talked to has said, we want to create a safe environment for our people to come back to work. And we're not going to do it until we know that it's safe. You know, I think a couple things go hand in hand. You know, we know technology, you know, definitely will play a short and long term, as I mentioned. You're kind of helping us manage the new normal. I think there's a couple things that are out of our hands at this stage is, you know, kind of that rapid testing we talked about, as well as vaccination. So if we set those things aside and we just look at how do you create a safe space, you know, I think contactless is going to be a way to go. I think you have those kind of suite of analytics that help you extract data and around behavior, right, to help you make decisions. We worked with a large customer that was opening, and you know, we tested out some crowd control analytics with a partner to help kind of keep people 6 feet apart. And then what do you do if they get together, and what are those standard operating procedures, right? We've also partnered up with Ben Butchko on doing security assessments for entry. So we've been doing that with some customers and really assessing, like, where do you need temp thermal? Where do you need to run analytics? How is your access control set up? You know, a lot of those will start to, you know, become contactless, touchless, new rules. If you look, some buildings already here in the Bay Area, there was a company that put out kind of what the future building looks like, right? And, you know, there's arrows on the ground as to where you can walk and where you can't. You know, there's plastic up, you know, plexiglass dividers and things like that. So that's kind of the non-tech side, I think, that how people are trying to solve. And then you look longer term at how do you take the analytics, how do you use your sensors, your access control, your, you know, the contactless, the touchless to, you know, make it feel safer to go into a new environment. So there's, you know, there's a bunch that are happening now. We highlighted in the ebook. The ebook is really an effort to bring together some suggested solutions and give some of our partners and customers ideas about what is being developed. So if you think about some of that, you know, we had, you know, Genetech did a occupancy management. They have Kiwi Analytics that did have some, you know, COVID solution tracking. You know, they have some, you know, security relative to occupancy management. They have policies that help you kind of adhere to local guidelines. There's some examples there. You also have folks like Splunk, for example. They have a set of tools and analytics that help you create mission critical dashboards. So it's sort of a data aggregation, right? Because there's a lot of data right now. So it enables you to kind of pull together that data. And that was really cool what they pulled together, and we highlighted that in the ebook as well. And then we'll start to move to a next step of publishing additional solutions we see through our Market Ready Solutions program and making those available publicly as well with our partners. So you'll start to see more and more, but some of the latest, so you can look at the ebook on intel.com, and then you can also go search for Market Ready Solutions, and there's additional COVID related solutions there that you can take a look at too, that our partners have put together.
Yeah,
I hope I
and
answered that one.
no, it's awesome.
You know me.
It's good. No, I appreciate it. We also have this whole idea, I think, as we exit this, that outside the buildings that or even building to building, that we're going to have more communication in these cities and more services in sort of this smart cities area that we hear about, we talk about. Everybody's still working to implement. I've seen a lot of devices being tested to do certain things, but if you can imagine taking those same sort of safety practices outside of a building into a public space, everything gets a lot more complex. And I love the idea of the digital finger reaching out. Hey, you've just become the 11th person and you need to leave the room or something or leave the area. I don't know what it is, but it's interesting if we can get to that point of, because humans seem to have been the kind of one of the problems here with the adherence to things, and maybe all the technology in the world won't stop this spread if people don't do some of the non-tech things that it takes, and the social distancing seems to be a thing. There was a picture of Hawaii's beaches this morning in the paper that were just packed and nobody's wearing a mask. I'm like, oh, that's not good. I mean, not from my opinion anyway. And so, what do you see on the smart city side? Maybe you could comment on that. Maybe it'll help us. That we'll see as we all get back to the new normal, whether it's later this year or next year, some things that may surprise some people that were developed quickly enough to help us.
Well, I think smart cities are really going to, obviously I've never run a city, right? So I'm really talking more to a technology perspective and having
Sure.
talked to cities. I think there's, depending upon the department, right? But in overall, cities are going to have to look at really how do they become more resilient, right? I mean, all cities are going to have to become, budgets are being cut, revenues are down or going to be down, as we hear in the news. And they're going to have to start looking at how do I use my infrastructure in a better way? How do I work with my other city partners, for example, or my state to kind of break down those silos? We've talked about this before. Cities often have their own projects, right? And then you create all these silos, and technology can really help them bring that together. And I think that's where cities are going to need to lean in to become much. I know there's several cities in my area that have kind of banded together to start to influence some of the public policy, health guidelines and so forth, just to help small business get back to work, right, and help them at least make a living. And so cities are having to do that. The other piece is hospitals, healthcare, right? Healthcare is becoming obviously increasingly important right now. I mean, shout out to all of our first responders, nurses, doctors, you name it. They're just amazing, and so they're getting the brunt of it, right? And so essentially our cities are going to have to work with their hospitals, their local hospitals, on how do they provide new services to constituents around telehealth or testing in the future or vaccination, other technologies that are that can be used to really scale and make healthcare available to their constituents. The other piece of education, I think that is obviously everybody's talking about, do the kids go back to school? Do they not go back to school? Every state has a different opinion. But technology, where we're coming at it is how do you ensure and enable working with our partners, cities and it may be inner cities, to have the latest technology. Some people don't even have connectivity. So how are the kids going to go to school if they don't have connectivity? And so, or how do they go to school if they don't have a device that can keep up with the amount of work and things that are processing on their PC, right? And so there's things like that we're looking at longer term. And there's been some things that we published around our pandemic innovation fund. We announced early on in COVID that we've been investing in healthcare solutions and innovations, education, as well as economic recovery solutions. And so that we published some things around City of Houston, LA Unified School District, and so forth, that where we're leaning in to help those cities and their education. So cities they're going to have a lot on their plate, right? And then leaning into keeping people safe, keeping the public safe, and at some point we're going to have to go back to normal, right? And we're going to have to do it in a new way, and people use that new normal, but the reality is it will be a new normal, right? There'll be some great things and there'll be some adjustments, I think, for people, but technology is there as a help, to help, really enrich the lives of everybody that's using the technology and help make your life better, right? That's really what cities are probably going to need to do relative to the technology, and they got a full plate, that's for sure.
Yeah, I don't know if people think about technology being part of the resilience stack. They always think it's forward looking and it's creating
Right.
new opportunity and doing new things. But from a city perspective, the capacity to be resilient, for not just to survive this, but to survive whatever comes next, and to
Right.
not just survive, but maybe to thrive even when things are difficult, right? And technology, I think, is offering us the path forward. And I think we just got a little bit of a wake up call here this time around. We weren't really paying attention. Well, we've got.
I think
Go
there's
ahead.
no easy answer either, Andrew, right? I mean, we all know
Yeah.
we're all living it. Every single one of us is living it. We may be living it our own way. I just don't know that there's all the answers are out there, right? We're learning, we're becoming more compassionate. We updated the ebook, by the way, with a new version, with a quote from the mayor of Houston, right? And I really liked what he said. He said, and I'm quoting this out of not exact, but you can see, they've learned from previous storms. So if you try to put it back the way it was, it's not going to work, right? So you got to kind of just take some lessons and learnings from that and apply them going forward, right? And so I really like that, because that can be a part of everyday life for us, right? Is, it's a lesson. How do I move forward and onward? And I really like that, because I think that's probably the approach cities are going to have to take is, hey, what did we learn from this? And now how do we make it better? And how do we really build out something unique and cool for our constituents? And there will be, technology, whether it's keeping your critical infrastructure safe, your public safety, your hospitals, your education institutions, as well as, your transportation, right? And ensuring you're able to, your intersections are functioning properly and you have different technologies that are helping you do that. And, so I think we'll start to see some of that as soon as cities can, really kind of get back to their smart planning, right? Is really
Sure.
where I think a lot of people are busy right now.
Yeah, it's trying to catch up. Well,
Yeah.
Kasia, thank you so much. I truly appreciate you sharing this perspective with us, because it's something I think a lot of people are wondering, what's going on in the rest of the world, because we're all shut into our own little worlds, right? So it's nice to hear, and I think we're all very fortunate that Intel's engaged and trying to help out with the solutions that they bring to the table. It's going to benefit us all just a little quicker. Maybe we'll do this again in another year. I hope we're not still locked down, but I really appreciate your time today. I know you're busy. You take care of yourself, and we'll talk again soon.
I'm going to fly to Hawaii for the next one.
Awesome. I appreciate it. Aloha.
Okay. Thank you.